lay it right here.
Okay. Wendy, go ahead and tell me what your full name is, how you want to see it appear on the screen, and what's your...
My full name is Wendell. My middle name is Ray, last name is Lee.
How do you spell Wendell?
W-E-N-D-E-double-L.
And your last name is
E-E.
Okay, no L-E-I-G-H?
No, no. I'm one of the Lees. It's not Chinese.
Okay. All right. Tell me what you did in the war.
Well, I made the military career. I really didn't intend to. But I gave it all to my country and attained the highest rank that, as an E9, Chief Master Sergeant. But in World War II, I wanted to become a pilot, and I wished out. And I probably was one of the longest as a buck private. I did not make corporal for almost 2 years. And I got letters from home my mother couldn't understand, you know, why that I was still a private. But I washed out of cadet training, and they told me that I had chosen radio and that I had to go to radio school. I couldn't go directly to gunnery. So I did. It took me 6 months to go through radio school in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and I went from Sioux Falls, South Dakota to radio gunnery school in Yuma, Arizona. And I spent approximately 2 months, 6 to 8 weeks of gunnery, and they had been promoting people to staff sergeant. I received corporal out of gunnery, and they gave us a 10-day delay en route to Omaha, Nebraska to form a crew. I went to Omaha, Nebraska, and met the other members of my crew. My pilot was Patrick Keach. I couldn't have found a finer man, really. Anyway, we were sent to Dyersburg, Tennessee for OTU, overseas training, which took, I think, 3 months or more. And then we went back to Lincoln to either take an airplane and go overseas or go by boat. And we came over on the Ile-de-France. And I started, you know, receiving indoctrination training, and we got here around Christmas of '44. On our first mission, we got lost. How we could get lost, I tell you. Being a radio operator, I flipped over to command. I heard the command pilot tell the rest of the pilots to spread out a little bit, maintain the same indicated airspeed and altitude, and we'd be out of the clouds within 5 minutes, and we were. We come out of the clouds, not another aircraft in sight. We're all alone and scared to death, or at least I was. The pilot flipped over to the navigator. He says, "Mick, what heading do I take to get to our next rendezvous point?" The navigator says, "How the hell do I know? Only the lead and deputy lead is navigating." He said, "We're just playing follow the leader." So the pilot says, "Well, what do you suggest?" He says, "I suggest that we find some place to get rid of these bombs, or we're not going to have enough gas to get back home." So the pilot dropped down to the top of the clouds. We kind of hid in the clouds for a while. Then we dropped below the level of the clouds to find a suitable target to get rid of our bombs. And we did, and headed for home. The pilot, after we got back, got his you-know-what chewed for doing that. And the reason being, we were told that George Patton was on his way to Berlin and we could have dropped bombs on our own troops. To never do that again. You either do it on your primary, secondary target, or you bring them back to the English Channel. And that was an eventful mission.
Do you know what you hit when you bombed, or do you have any idea what it was?
I have no idea. I do recall in Germany, people, they live in little, they don't, not like in America, a farm here and a farm there and whatever, you know, little villages like. And I really never found out exactly.
Well, tell me about being a radio operator. Describe your equipment and how it worked. And the main thing is, kids today just assume you had a radio, you had a microphone and headphones, and you talked. You didn't do that. You used Morse code.
No, we learned Morse code. We had to have learned to receive and send 20 words a minute. And we also learned to send by light. And I really and truly, I never cared too much for sending and receiving Morse code. I would have preferred, you know, voice transmission. And when we got in combat, we were restricted, or we had to copy. Our ground station transmitted a signal ever so often, and we had, as I recall, the ground station was 1 TL. I'll never forget it. And we used to have Q signals that meant certain things, and some were not repeatable, you know, and that we would give when other radio operators didn't send very well or whatever. And it was difficult to send in an aircraft, especially if you had gloves on. And we had radio silence for during the mission, and never, or at least I didn't make any transmissions. The first time that we were hit with fighters, I'll never forget that.
Tell me about that.
Never forget it. Well, I fired the left waist. They did have a radio gun in the radio room, and it proved to be unsatisfactory because the radio gunner shot the vertical stabilizer. There wasn't a stop on it on the B-17. And the first time we were hit by enemy fighters, I think it was Messerschmitt's ME-110s, and I grabbed my 50 calibers and wheeled them around, got the guy in my sight. I pulled the trigger, and the damn things was on safe. I never got a fire off. But I had a lot of holes in my airplane. And I said, Self, that ain't never going to happen again. And I tell you, religiously, I went and put those things ready to fire, even when they were in a stowed position. Because you know, you don't have much time to make decisions. And my job as a radio operator was to push chaff out the thing to jam the enemy radar. Our aircraft, in addition to that, we carried what they called a carpet operator that scanned back and forth, picking up signals to jam radar. And the Germans had, once they could get your altitude down, their flak was very accurate, and you had no choice but to fly through it. And you've probably heard
the carpet thing.
Oh yeah. Well, we did have a carpet operator on our aircraft, and the fellow, or at least the one on my plane, he'd get airsick, and I recall I used to keep him awake by reaching over and kicking him. And at any rate, I said, you ain't sleeping on my plane. If you can't stay awake, well, you better stay on the ground. And one time we got a direct hit. I don't recall now. My Balter at Gunner chronicled most all the missions, and I used to take my radio frequency meter in case the radio room was fair-sized room, had a lot of room on a B-17. And the transmitter sit on the desk, and you had a key on the right, and you also had a receiver, BC-310 receiver, as I recall, or 315, 191 transmitter. And I would take the frequency meter, which I used to tune it up, and I stowed it underneath the table. And we always had a story going around, you know, we used that as added protection for your family jewel. We take it from underneath the table and put it underneath your chair, and the chair would swivel, you know, around. And once day we got a direct hit with flak, and I looked around, you know, and there was flak all over the floor in the radio compartment, small pieces. Fortunately, I didn't get hit. And well, on the way home afterwards, I'd always take my freak meter and put it back where it was stowed. So this particular time, I reached to get it, and whoa, here's a hole about this square underneath that, you know, where it's set. And I would have dropped clear right straight on boot to the ground. And I said, boy, how lucky can you get? You know, no. But it happened. So another thing, as I recalled, when the war ended, we got credited for 22 or 23 missions. The other crew that was in our hut, all of them got killed on the 21st of April. And we were ahead of them in flying our missions. We had more than them. And they complained to their pilot that we were like Peck's bad boys. So our pilot says, well, you know, the best thing to do is split you guys up. We're going to have to move. So that particular mission, we stood down. But it's a true story. We were angry, very angry, because we had to move all of the stuff out, and we cursed at them. You know, we hope you get your you-know-what, blah, 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 blah. And mostly it was just through anger. So about 3:30 in the afternoon, when the aircraft come back, we're always interested how many planes do we lose. Well, the 490th that day lost 4 aircraft. I verified this with Eric. And one of them was, I think the pilot, we call him Little Red. He's a little short, red-headed guy, but I think his name was Schoenfeld or something like that. And they got a direct hit with a 262. And, you know, none of them, they were all killed, as far as I know. But after the war, and I wrote a piece up for the Bombs Away. 2 weeks ago, we lost our engineer. He was the last one named today on the list. And we went to Rotterdam and Amsterdam to deliver food. And in 1987, now you got to figure, you know, this was in 45. In 1987, I belonged to the Rotary Club in California, and a lady wrote a book about that, and it's called Give Terry a Bone. And Rotary Luncheon, we always have a half hour for a program, and she gave her bit and was selling this book, to Give Terry a Bone. And it was about the 8th Air Force delivering food because the Germans had, you know, flooded their land and they were desperately needed it. And the first one that I went on, the radio operator, the engineer, pilot, co-pilot, and I think the bombardier, I don't even think the navigator went along. But my job was to, if any boxes hung up in the bomb bays, they had a pole, and the engineer would assist me in pushing those boxes out so that they fell free. We were supposed to drop our food on a golf course outside of Amsterdam or Rotterdam, I don't recall now, at 500 feet, come in at 500 feet and drop these boxes. Well, I had the radio room door open. I had my headsets on and throat mic, and the engineer and I were shooting the breeze. And he was kneeled down on the catwalk in the Bombay. And we finished our, we coming over the target, and he started to get up and go back, you know, to where he was going to stand when we dropped the food. Lo and behold, all of a sudden, the Bombay doors come open, and we looked, and the boxes started falling on all the people that had lined the streets with American flags. They were waving them like this. They looked up, and they see all these boxes coming, you know, and they started running, getting the hell out of the way. And the pilot yells over intercom, "Who in the hell salvo pushed this way?" The bombardier says, "Wasn't me." And I said, "Wasn't me, Pappy." That's what I said. And later we discovered the engineer, there's a salvo switch in the Bombay of the B-17. That he had his parachute harness on, you know, and when he raised up, it tripped the salvo switch and released those boxes. We laugh about it now. And the lady that wrote this book, I told her the story, and she said she wanted me to have the book. She autographed the book and gave me one. And I was going to bring, I've got it misplaced, but I'm going to find it somewhere. We moved 10 years ago, and you know how it is.
All right.
Okay?
Well, that was a great story.